All right, let's get started. Today we are joined by a special guest who I just had the pleasure of meeting. Was it this past week?
Last weekend.
Yeah, last week. So this is Craig Nolan. Craig and I are both members of a veterans business Facebook group.
Veterans business something. Yeah, I should know that. But again,
Hell,
my memory's
so
shot.
I'd put something on there about starting the podcast and the premise of the podcast and how it's for, our veterans, first responders, but not just that, spouses, family members, all those that kind of go through this journey with us. And Craig reached out to me. Craig's a business owner you said outside of Philadelphia, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Craig owns, you want to go ahead and, actually, let's go ahead and start with your bio a little bit. So Craig is military and career law enforcement, retired. He did 7 years. What's that?
Finally.
One day. I've got maybe 10 years left, so I'll be there shortly, hopefully. So he did 7 years in the U.S. Army, 28 years law enforcement. He was Army active duty from, you said, 89 to 93?
Yes, sir.
And 82nd Airborne, jumping out of perfectly good airplanes.
I did it well.
Well, you're not the only person I know that has a couple screws loose to jump out of a good airplane. But so served in the Gulf War?
First one, yes.
Okay.
The little short one.
Yeah. And then Pennsylvania National Guard for last 3 years?
Yeah, just under 3, just shy of 3.
And then you attended your police academy in 94, which is the year I graduated high school. Not trying to make you feel old.
It's all right. My wife does it to me every day.
Let's see, Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, full-time for 3 years, and then you're in the suburbs of Philly from 97 till you retired in 21, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Owner and founder of Nolan's Poorhouse Coffee Company, which this would look a whole lot better if it was in a Nolan's mug. But
we'll get
you're out of stock on your website. But as soon as you get them, I'm definitely going to have one.
We'll get them back.
Drinking the Night Watch.
We'll get that thin red line for you, too. So
there we go. Okay. I'm drinking some of the Night Watch. I'll probably be up a good portion of the night. I usually don't drink coffee this late, but I figure it's only fitting. So Craig and I met on this the Facebook group. He told me about his company, and you said you're outside Philadelphia, and how I'm going to let you talk. I'm just sitting here rambling. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the coffee business.
I mean, much like anything, when you're in the military, you do anything you can to stay awake, especially as an infantryman. We did, the old coffee from the MRE with the hot cocoa mix, or you just dip the coffee grinds from the instant pack or whatever you could do to stay awake. Drinking coffee from the Roach Coach at the rifle range, you name it, you drank it. Didn't drink a lot of it in the military, enough to keep it going. And I always loved the smell of it. My grandfather drank a lot of it, or from what I recall, my short time with him. And just always, there was a restaurant in our town that I live in that I got to work in the end. That every time we would go there for lunch, and their coffee just permeated the air, and it just always had that smell. So coffee always triggered something with us. Lo and behold, a couple years go by. We're a bunch of guys from the high school, girls that we all worked with that were in police, fire, military, EMS, nursing. A couple years go by. We're all deep in our careers and seeing everything we're seeing. And a couple years go by, and I think the highest I saw on the scale was 2. So I was up there at 5'8". That's pretty large. I've got bad knees from jumping from the airplanes and stuff. My knee doc tells me about intermittent fasting. So I started to get rid of cream and sugar out of my coffee and tried to extend that fasting window, and realized I was drinking absolute junk coffee. And for those, and I keep looking at the screen here, I apologize, camera's down here.
No, that's okay.
But our area has a place called Wawa, which is in our area is very well known. It's much like Sheetz or Royal Farms, things like that. They have good coffee, but it's not great coffee. And I realized I was drinking lots of cream and sugar in there to hide that coffee. So I had to get rid of it. Try and lose weight, do whatever I can to stay in that fasting window. That's when I found small batch roasted coffee, and I started to seek out veteran-owned coffee companies, or law enforcement or first responder-owned coffee companies, and we're everywhere. We exist all across this country. If you probably can't throw a dart in any direction, not hit one of us. And I found some great ones. I mean, there are some awesome companies out there. Just found one that's about 2 hours away from me. I just got their stuff in the mail the other day. I can't wait to try and fire it up tomorrow and see what it tastes like, see what it's like. I want to support those guys. But just introduced it to my crew. We would sit on a porch. My one guy, Ron, I tease him. We call him the other owner. We would sit on his porch and just clear our heads and talk and think, much like you guys do with the concept behind the Firehouse Table. And we would use that time over coffee to just get our minds right and get that motivation back, or just to try and lose that piss poor attitude. And Ron looked at me one day after I introduced these guys to small batch coffee and said, "Why don't we do it ourselves?" And that was the start of it. We started with one blend, and now we have roughly, without guess or counting over my shoulder, I think we have 9 plus a decaf with our main roaster. We will have up to 7 again in K-Cups to match those roasts. The K-Cup producer we have, we're going to be trying to cycle in some of their single origin beans. We have a single origin that we deal with now from a gentleman. It's another infantryman, much more. He's a global war of terror combat veteran. I met him through a friend of mine that they served together with, and he is a fourth generation farmer. They own the farm. Him and his family own the farm in Guatemala, and they import it. And now we have their single origin cup, or their single origin bean here. So it's a true veteran-owned farm-to-cup coffee. And we've reused the name that we had in the past for a Panamanian blend we had in. We call it the ICAC. It's a play on the IFAC for the individual first aid kit. We call it the individual coffee aid kit. So that's just a glimpse. We try to have fun with our coffee names. We try to have fun with every one of our guys and girls that are part of our crew all have either a title or something, like Ron's the national sales manager. There's one of us. I'm the only employee, but he's the national sales manager.
Assistant to the regional manager, like the office.
Exactly. One of our guys, I always get it wrong. I got his card here. He's a chief paramedics. We call him chief of activities and operational situations. So he's chaos. So, I mean, just to give you an idea, that's the kind of stuff that we try to do. And you guys see it at the Firehouse Table. I mean, Ron, my wife, both fought fires in the volunteer service. I did it when I was 16 to about 23 or 24. Right when I got into the academy, I stopped running with the volunteer service. But those guys and girls, we have crews that are still in volunteer now. We have guys that are paid Philly firefighters that come out and do the volunteer that are part of our group. So, I mean, we are still deep in the trenches with our guys and girls that we use the coffee as an excuse to get together and think and talk and get our minds right.
That's a gateway. That's what you need. Just something to sit down with. And well, It's the one thing. I think it's funny. It's like you mentioned. I remember drinking coffee in the military, but we're not picky. We even had a cadence that we would either march or run to. See that in the Navy, the coffee's mighty fine. It looks like muddy water. It tastes like turpentine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back then, we didn't care what it tasted like, if it helped you stay awake. It was before all these energy drinks and, so we would just drink really shitty coffee. But when you become, you're a firefighter, a police officer, you don't want to waste your time with that crap anymore. You're like, give me something good. And you get a little bit more of a palate and you get rid of that cream and sugar in your coffee, and you can actually taste it. People are like, how do you drink it black? Well, it's like eating a good steak. But then I'm not making fun of anybody that does this, but if you put A1 or ketchup, whatever you do for your steak, you're ruining it.
Absolutely.
If you make
100%.
a good steak, you don't need anything. It's just perfect the way it is.
Salt, pepper, and grill marks, bud. That's all you need.
That's it. Little heat. A lot of pink on the inside too.
That's it's funny you say, because I mean it's very the coffee genre, for lack of better words. Again, they're everywhere. You can probably throw a dart in any direction, compass direction, or axis if you want to go, and you're going to hit a veteran-owned or first responder-owned. I've refused to attack another or go after anybody. I support them. I buy it left and right. When I go away on a hunting trip or something like that, I'm always looking for those coffee shops, and I go in and buy, and I drink their coffee. I love it. I still buy coffee online from other companies. Like I said, just to what better excuse than to try their coffee and get
Yeah,
it
it
in.
gives you an idea of what's out there and see what other people are doing with.
Absolutely, and just every little bit helps every small business out there. I refuse to go for the the Starbucks or the Dunkin' and that kind. I mean, don't get me wrong. If that's what's on the highway and that's the only choice I got, I go for it. But I mean, it's
Right.
for the most part,
support the small ones.
yeah, I love finding them small companies. That's it. It's if I'm going to spend $34 on 2 bags of coffee, that's where I want to send it. And it's like your wine, your beer, your craft brewery. That's probably a great analogy of it. Every craft brew shop that's out there, everybody does IPAs, pale ales, lagers, and all that stuff. But it's the brewer, or in this case, a lot of times it's the roaster's interpretation on how they get and derive that flavor from the beans. I mean, it's all same regional beans. I jokingly say it all the time, and I forget where or who said it in our group, but we tend to sell a story is what we tend to do for the most part. When we're at a show or at an event, we tell a story and we talk about why we came together, and then they come back because we're pretty biased. Our coffee is good, but I mean, it's the story, it's the reason why, and then people get involved with it, and it just keeps growing. I mean, we started out it was going to be one blend, and then it was all right, two, and that's it. We're done. I mean, quick glance over my shoulder, you can, the shelves are pretty bare. I just sat at home labeling my butt off, with a bunch of stuff before bringing it into the office. So, I mean, we're adding more and more. There's no stop. I said never to a lot of things, and a lot of those nevers are sitting over my shoulder, and I'm sitting in one of the nevers. I said never to an off-site location. I was going to operate it out of the house, and I finally got kicked out of the house. So, I mean, the house smelled wonderful.
Oh, I bet.
We needed the dining room back, so.
A little expansion never hurt.
No, scared to death of it, but.
Well, I mean, you got to start somewhere. That's how it goes. So, U.S. Army, Airborne, Gulf War. Tell us a little bit about your time in the Army. I know you're 82nd, but
I wish I drove my truck today because my keyring that has my first set of wings my first set that I earned. So I jumped. It was I think December 13th. If my memory's failing me, I think it's correct though. December 13th of '89 was my last jump in jump school for my 5th jump for jump certificate. Only a portion of our class got through it because the Rangers were gearing up for what we didn't know at the time was Panama. So here we were losing airplanes to them for training and such, but our entire class, only about a third of us got through. And usually we were always told, and I'm going back years now, that you had your wing ceremony pinned on the back of the barracks. Well, we did ours on the drop zone, and my mom got to pin them on me on the drop zone. So that first set of wings, I have them on my truck keyring, and those wings have spurred conversation more times than I care to admit. And it's a fraternity that you cannot get rid of. I'll put it up against any sorority or fraternity or any other social group out there. You could take the oldest paratrooper that jumped in World War II to the newest paratrooper that just came off the drop zone with their 5th jump, and it's a brotherhood and a sisterhood that you cannot shake, and you'll never, that 82nd and those wings, I don't care what your political division is or what your thoughts are, you'll go shoulder to shoulder or patch to patch with that person in a heartbeat just for that reason alone. And you can't shake a stick at that. That's something that's never going to go away.
Yeah, that's one thing I always.
I'm eternally thankful for that. I mean, some of those guys that I serve with are just. I wish I had taken more time as a young soldier and learned more, and actually, listen to the older heads more and done some wiser and smarter things.
Don't we all? Yeah, it's a funny thing about military units, fire departments, police departments. It's a tight knit group, and I think it's that way because you experience a lot of this stuff together as a group, and only as a group. If you haven't done it, the lay person or civilian listening, they may not get it. Chances are they don't. They may have some kind of an idea in their head, but unless you actually served and did those things, you can just look at somebody and nod your head and they know. It's the same thing as, police, fire, EMS. We see some stuff that most people will never see in their lifetime. And a lot of it's, it's hard on us. It takes its toll. But it's a little easier when you talk to someone who's done it and been through it because then, hey, this guy knows what I'm talking about. Whereas, if you really want the shock factor of, I think it's one thing I always dislike. I don't want to say I hate because they don't know any better, is when a civilian or someone who wasn't in the military or wasn't police or fire or EMS says, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? They want that shock factor, and they just, that's not really something that we want to talk about and go back to because those aren't usually the best memories of our lives. Definitely those for those we serve with.
They truly don't want to know what somebody has seen or what that worst moment is that someone saw in their career. They would 99% of the public would be shocked and stunned.
Yeah. So the coffee company started in 2009, correct?
Well, we jokingly say 2009. So my wife and I got married and always had a basement bar in the house, and it was called the Poorhouse. So when we got married in 09, we just kept the established 09. And once we LLC'd in 2018 for the coffee company, we just kept the name and figured that it fits the bill. It's still pouring.
Well, I mean, technically, it started started somewhere. It started there in the basement.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously she accepted the, legally she was stuck with me in 09, but she bought into this scheme in 05, but she thinks I'm crazy. I think most wives or most spouses of all of us think we're crazy. Doesn't matter if it has to be a husband, wife, or whatnot. But it's always, like, again, there's part of that. That's part of the fun factor. We just try not to take ourselves seriously. Our goal is something serious. We want to have that avenue, that opening, that vessel, that way to get people to sit down and get it off their chest. But we try not to take ourselves too seriously. So yeah, we established in 09. Again, a lot of the coffee bags have Easter eggs on them that is part of our shtick when we tell the story at shows and things. We kind of explain the bags to people, and just for reference, one of ours is Liberty Risk. Is for you Navy and Marine guys.
I was reading the back. That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
I was going to bring that up, but we can go ahead and talk about some of the blends.
Well,
I was looking at the artwork is amazing.
Well, and a lot of that, like the night shift, that was done by a combat Marine. Now it's way better than me. I'm barely able to operate a crayon, but it's some of the other stuff is just I've had to force myself to learn on a computer. But like the Liberty Risk, we have Captain Heinz Gruber is this captain who signed the Liberty Pass. Just the little jokes are on there. The nickname that's on there for is one of our guys. Here he's still an active police officer, and his nickname is Lumpy because he's got a pack of hot dogs for the back of his neck.
Oh.
So just little things like that. Like everything's got little Easter eggs and stories to it. Again, we try not to take ourselves seriously. So yeah, we established 09.
Yeah, I was looking over some of the brands you have, and the house blend is good. Night Shift is really good, and each one kind of has its own story, and the story's kind of on the back of the packaging. You mentioned Liberty Risk. One of them I was kind of looking at, I need to do a little more research on, is the Bloody Bucket.
Yes. Yeah.
So that seemed to have the biggest description. And is it based on a book, or is there a book about the Bloody Bucket? Can you tell me?
Well, we do have a book out. So we have a local historian, a military historian that wrote a book that we partnered with as well. That we have a little package deal where you can get a book and get a bag of coffee. It doesn't have to be the Bloody Bucket. It can be anything of the mix that you want. But the Bloody Bucket is the National Guard, 28th Infantry Division here in Pennsylvania. It also encompasses parts of Jersey, New York, and I believe parts of Maryland. During World War II, the 28th fought in the Battle of the Bulge area, and I believe it's Battle of the Bulge. It might have been Belgium. No, that would be the same area. The Germans nicknamed them the Bloody Bucket because the shoulder patch is the keystone, a red keystone, and it looked like a bucket full of blood. So they called them the Bloody Bucket because they fought so hard and took so many casualties, yet gave so many casualties back to the Germans that nickname was monikered from World War II. Young man who was a National Guard's, probably, I'm trying to think through my math here, 2020, the pandemic. So summer 2021, I think we introduced that blend. He had come to me and asked me to do a blend in honor of the 28th. And I had served for a couple of years with them in the Guard when I got out of off active duty. So for me, it was a fitting thing to do. And it's a Mexican. It's the only one my father-in-law will drink. Now, he does mix it with decaf now. I think he's
A little bit high
cut,
test.
Yeah, he's cutting it down a little with that. But and he drinks motor oil. Like he likes his coffee dark. So it's real good, hard, full bodied. But the trying to tell the story about the 28th on that little 4-inch by 6-inch label is tough. And
you got to do the Cliff Notes version.
Well, that's just it. And you're trying to give, I don't even try to pretend I know the full history of the unit, even though I should. And that's the funny part is when I went to our roaster and I said, hey, he knows that I love the Mexican micro a lot that he gets his hands on. I just love that, especially the Chiapas region, if I'm saying it right. I love that regional bean. There's a veteran company that they shut down during the pandemic and never came back, unfortunately. They had a Mexican coffee that to this day I swear was the best I've ever had, and I would kill for them to come back and bring it back. And that's where I found I love that Mexican blend. So I told him I want to involve a Mexican blend, and he said, well, how about we mix it with an Ethiopian so you have a little more gas in the tank? And I said, well, I want to call it the Bloody Bucket. And he goes, all right, that'll work. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, don't you know your own unit's history? I was like, no, sorry, should I? He goes, yeah, and before World War I, the 28th was part of the unit that was pushed down onto the Texas border with Mexico and took part of the Pancho Villa raids trying to capture Pancho Villa. So like that's the silly nuances that kept popping. That all right, that's why we picked this blend by happenstance. So I mean, just little things like that. Everything happens. We're very lucky with everything that happens. Our roaster and our roaster team that we have, way beyond what I can do. I mean, I have the attention span of a squirrel. And for them to be able to, I go to them and say, this is what we like, this is what we want to target, this is the kind of idea we have, and they come back at us with something, and they've nailed it. I'd say 19 out of 20 times we've come at them with something, they've nailed it every time. And we're just so super lucky. And then like our K-Cups, where they're made, they're an hour from me. So I'll take a ride tomorrow. I just got the notification to go pick up a new fresh batch of K-Cups. And I love the ride. And you get out there, and that company, they're still under 10 years old. And they went from, when we first started working with them, a single row machine operating, making single row K-Cups. They're running two quad units now where they're pumping out 4 rows at a time. So, I mean, they're growing. So we're super lucky that we've hit all the right people at the right time. And we just keep growing with the right people. Everything hits perfectly. The timing's always right. The stories seem to fit our ideas. The label blend names, like we had that dark Panamanian roast that we had in a couple years ago. We called it Spooky, and it was after the AC-130, the AC-130 that
gunships.
The gunship. So I mean, and it fit the taste. It was a dark espresso from Panama, and it was awesome. It just we had it roasted in country there, so it came to us finished. So it was like taking a trip to Panama on your back porch. You roasted it here, and you were good to go. It was. We need to get that gentleman back in our fold because it was some really good coffee.
That's cool. And a couple more. I saw one was Claymore, and you had touched on that was one of your favorite toys while in the Army.
Show me an infantryman who doesn't love the Claymore. Can't find.
I was in the Navy, and I love Claymores.
That's what I mean.
My captain in my old Firehouse was he was U.S. Navy, but he had one of those trailer hitch covers, and it was a Claymore. So if you're driving behind him, it says, front towards the enemy.
Even civilians know what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another one that kind of caught my eye was the water dog, and I know that's one other thing that you and I have in common, other than wanting to sit around and military service, public service, coffee, and is our love for dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading a little bit about yours, and we were kind of chatting as we got to know each other about you love your hunting dogs.
We had an old pup. We lost him 2012, He still graces the front of my phone. That's Gunner. He was a big old English black lab. He was not trained correctly, but boy, was he a hell of a hunting dog. I mean, you could send him on a line and just let him go. Tell him to hunt it up and go back to doing what you're doing. 15 minutes later, he'd bring the bird back to you. And then
So now, did you train your dogs, or did you send them somewhere to get formally trained, or
no, I
a little
trained
bit
them.
of both?
If you want to call it training, I'd call it maybe I kind of might have not trained him, but he did his own thing. He was very good at it. A buddy of mine, he coined him a meat dog. He was not a blue ribbon dog. He wouldn't take a straight line, but he could take hand casts. We practiced in the yard and started out with a little game of baseball with him, throwing bumpers. And as he grew, he got just phenomenal hunting. He was the hunting dog that every guy should have that goes out in the hunting blind to duck hunt or goose hunt. That's the kind of dog everybody has at least once in their life, and I had it right out the gate.
It's pretty cool too to watch their natural instincts just kick in, because the breeds like Labradors. We're a Labrador family too. We have 3. Of course, one's the working dog, but
I'm trying to talk the wife into 2.
I know a breeder of English Labs we got here in Ohio. So our English Lab Chesney is 2.5 maybe. Our yellow Lab Lucy, she's 13. She's an old lady. And then I really haven't discussed it on the podcast yet, but I'm an arson canine handler, and my working dog his name's Harry. He just turned 2. He's he's more like an English Lab. I've never seen a working drive in a dog like this one has. He is crazy.
And Gunner had that natural instinct. Did I train him with bumpers and stuff and hand signals? Yeah, I did. Did I do it correctly? Probably not by any standard. The guys that I hunt ducks with, they know how to train dogs, and they really do it right. I got lucky. When Murphy came along, we had 2 young babies at the time, so he didn't get the training that Gunner got, and he didn't get the hunting trips that Gunner got. But when it came to personality, another English Lab, that calm, cool, collected Lab, he was just the perfect family dog. He was a couch potato, got in between you and got in between the babies and the front door, always did his thing. Had manners like there was no tomorrow. Those 2 didn't know what leashes were or what collars were. They could walk around the front yard. They wouldn't leave the yard. You could command them with a simple just a voice command, and they would listen. And then we went and got this British Labrador, and that's the Southern Oak Kennels. I think there's 8 or 9 of them throughout the from Mississippi area this way. I think there's one in Texas. We got one from the East Coast, Sock East, they call it, Southern Oak Kennels East. A gentleman by the name of Parrish. What an operation. The dogs and the families are they're beautiful. But they're supposed to be that English Lab calm demeanor with that American field trial hunting drive. And let me tell you, he's got it. Hank has all the gas in the tank that he wants, and then some. But he can also turn around and be a couch potato that quick.
Sounds like some police and firemen I know.
You see me, right? You're looking at one.
2.
It's owner and dog. We're one and the same. We sat on the couch on the porch this morning for an hour and did nothing. It was beautiful. He is the smartest out of the 3 I've had, but he is also the hard-headedest. He will, if he don't want to listen, he ain't gonna listen.
Can't change his mind.
No, and you're not gonna. But
yeah.
And that's, if you look at the Water Dog label, you'll see that the front label has both Gunner and Murphy silhouettes on the front, and then the very back is Hank as a puppy. And again, a lot of our blends, I'd say 90% of them, are military or law enforcement, first responder oriented. And, we wanted that to an all Brazil bean, and it's a breakfast style blend, so it's a lighter roast. I don't like using the term blonde roast because I think that's a bogus way of describing a light roast. It has a lot of caffeine. People don't realize them light roasts have a ton of caffeine. I can't drink it on an empty stomach. I've got to have breakfast in me if I drink it, or else I will. And I drink, so I have my silver cup. My silver's water, but my 20-ounce black cup is, when I have that, I'm drinking coffee. But I have about a 20-ounce, maybe 30-ounce coffee max throughout the day. I don't drink a lot of it. But that Water Dog, it's got some gas in the tank.
All right, well, you got me looking at a couple other blends I'm going to have to buy next. But my coffee intake's cut down a lot since I quit riding the medic because being up all night and coming home the next day, I used to hate coming home and taking naps because then I'd be up all again the next night. So
Yep.
I would just try and stay awake, drinking coffee. And I don't know. I think I would drink at least a pot and a half of coffee a day. But I found if you get a good coffee, not that store-bought commercial stuff, but something that's got, like you said, gas in the tank, you don't need as much. So I've definitely cut down on my coffee intake from what it used to be. Plus, getting some sleep is not too bad.
We touched on that a little bit, and sleep is an absolute key component to life. Even as a kid, I didn't really have normal sleep. So when I jokingly say I haven't had sleep that was normal since the day I left for the military, even before I didn't sleep normal as a kid. January of last year, I really started to try and target my sleep and getting the sleep pattern down and normal daylight, activities in the morning, getting that daylight in the eyes. There's a lot of science behind it. I won't even dare to try to act like I know what I'm talking about. I just regurgitate stuff that I've heard and listened to and do. But sleep is a core component to getting things right. Throughout the pandemic, my weight ballooned back up. I got down when I was my lowest fasting. I was under 200 pounds. I got down to 195. I felt phenomenal. I was more active. Even my knees hurt less. It was good. And then pandemic, when the girls didn't go back to school and my days off, I was lunch lady twice a day.
Yeah.
So I was
I think
back.
the pandemic did that to a lot of us.
Well, somebody coined it the pandemic 20 or whatever, right? So,
yeah.
I ballooned up and then I knocked it out again and I got back down before I went on my trip out west in May of 21. I got down, I think I was 205 when I left for that. And after that, I retired in August of 21 and right back up I went.
Yeah.
And, now the lowest I've been since I've been retired was about a month ago. I hit 208 and I'm trying desperately to go back. But getting sleep and caffeine. So even later in the day, caffeine is not a horrible thing. Now, you drank the night shift or drinking the night shift. I would want to say to you, drink some water on top of it here, just to kind of wind down for the evening. I won't have coffee from 60 to 90 minutes, and that's just a standard. That's the goal. I usually go 3 to 4 hours from the time I wake up. So if I'm waking up at 5 in the morning, usually the earliest I have coffee is 9 o'clock in the morning or 10. And the reason is, and again, I'm just regurgitating stuff, but you look it up, and there's a guy by the name of Andrew Huberman. Look him up. You'll see a plethora of information that he talks about. But there's a thing called adenosine, I think it is, that when you're waking up, caffeine kind of blocks it, stymies it. So if you drink your coffee right away or any caffeine product right away, you'll get that afternoon crash. So when I was on day work, noon or 1 o'clock after lunch, I just felt, bogged down and just zombie. Well, that was because I had my caffeine so early that it was stunting the release of that adenosine. So you want it to get out of your system. So if you go that, they say 60 to 90 minutes, and I was like, no way, I can't do it. And he'll tell you, start 15 minutes and go by 15-minute increments. I'm at a point now where for me to go to 9, 10, 11 o'clock is an absolute nothing. Super easy. And when I have that coffee that late, I have that 120-ounce tumbler, maybe a little bit more, it's better. I don't know why. It just is better. And I don't crash. Now I lie. Yesterday I crashed yesterday afternoon. I was tired and had to go for some caffeine to get up and stay awake for a little bit. But I think it's just because I've been doing other things to try and get that sleep pattern back, because sleep is key for health all the way around. Mental health, physical health, the whole works. If you don't get
I
that
totally
right,
agree.
if you're not going to get that sleep right, and if you're going to let your demons keep you awake, it's gonna keep compounding. So right away, our guys and girls out there have got to get their sleep figured out. That's key.
Yeah, and I know some of these jobs, like, on fire department, police have a little more regular schedule, 8 to 12-hour shifts. Fire, like our department's 24 on, 48 off. You're not guaranteed any time of sleep in that 24 hours. You're not guaranteed a warm meal. You try and sit down 3 or 4 times to eat, and you get interrupted every time. You come back to a cold plate.
Murphy's
It's kind of
Law.
like, yeah, it is. I kind of got used to eating fast in the military. Well, in boot camp, you're kind of, there's no time to talk. You eat when you get a chance to eat. It's the same way in the firehouse. If you're not on a run, I've had my wife tell me numerous times, we'll sit down to eat, and I don't say a word, just scarfing food, and she has to remind me, hey, you're not at the firehouse. You can calm down. It's just the way we're wired, man. We got to eat. Got to do it now. I'm surprised I haven't choked.
I believe it. I still find myself, and I'm removed from it all, I still eat fast even now.
I don't think it'll ever leave us. It's just the way we're hardwired. So another thing I noticed on your website I kind of wanted to touch on is how you've got a little blurb there. It says that you're planning on giving back to the youth that want to go to colleges and academies that want to get into career fields like maybe even military, but police, fire, EMS. Can you touch on that at all?
So we wanted to try and target and do something along the lines, and even if it's something super small, starting out with, even if it's a simple $500 or $1,000 towards like I can't think of the word I'm looking at, not a grant, but just as a
kind of like a scholarship,
like a scholarship kind of thing to anybody that's going into that first responder field, medical field, first police, fire, EMS, nursing. Again, we have nurses in our group, within our families, directly within the group that, here. The military, obviously, they don't need anything. The military is going to give them everything they need.
But they'll pay you well for your training, won't they?
Oh, yeah, real well. Yeah, but we would do it all over again. So, but
without hesitation.
Without hesitation. But we want to try and do that, and I would say we did it once a couple of years ago. We were able to do a little scholarship, even if it just gave them $500 to put towards books in their first year at school. It was something that we could do, and we did it. And now we're starting to, the momentum is building again within the company. We're starting to see that quicker turnover where I'm not sitting on, an order. Because again, we order everything in very small batch orders. I kind of get yelled at by some of the smarter business heads out there that I should buy in bigger bulk so that my profit margin gets bigger. But if I do that, then I have the potential to sit on coffee for months at a time. And that, to me, even though, and we did an informal study, we put a bunch of our coffee in the windowsill. One of our old places we stored the coffee in a windowsill in the daylight for 12 months. And then we test drove it. We made it, and you couldn't tell the difference. It was in the bag, sealed. The air valve does its job. And you really can't tell. Could I tell? Maybe. Purist that I am. Can you tell when coffee's stale? Absolutely you can. But did it really affect it? No. So I've always tried to live by, I want to have the coffee come in and be gone and out the shelf within 6 to 8 weeks max. I want it to rotate that fast. And if I go with a bigger batch, it scares me to death that I'm going to sit on coffee and it's going to go stale. Since 2018, what's that? 6.5-ish years? 6 years. I think I've only had to replace one bag of coffee or one box of K-Cups once. We swear by it up and down. If somebody doesn't think it's right or fresh, I don't even care. I replace it. No questions asked. Gone. Here's the next one. Or money back. It doesn't matter to me. I don't do that. I don't question it. Now that we're starting to see the higher turnover and the company's growing and we're starting to see that profit, we're finally in we're no longer considered, I guess, a hobby business. We finally made money this year, according to the IRS. But now we can finally turn. I think I can finally turn and say, now we can do something. And how we're going to do that, we have to decide. We had some other things in the works that we were trying to do. We've done a bunch of, we just did a donation to a local school that did a dodgeball tournament for veterans. And we did a very small sample box of our K-Cups as part of their gift bags to the veterans. Just that one event, I gave them 25 samples and 5 for the staff that set it up. We've gotten 3 or 4 calls. I just took one yesterday from somebody who test drove the coffee and liked it. That has shown rewards. We've donated to local dinners. We just supported a friend of ours who was shot in the line of duty a couple weeks ago. We just did a benefit for him over the weekend where we did a silent auction item. We've done it for hunting groups from the SCI to Ducks Unlimited. I would show it here without turning the camera around. There's a company out of Georgia. It's a turkey call company called Pistol Creek. we got lucky to get to know them years ago when we went down to Nashville. And I mean, what an honor to be humbled. They put us on their team calling jersey. Our logo is on the team calling jersey. And we did a bunch of coffee for one of their guys. It was a national champion caller. We lost him during COVID. I'm not sure what the medical ailment was. I don't think it was COVID. But we lost him at the young age of like 52. So we did a coffee in his honor. And then, sadly, a year later, we lost his brother at the same age again. So we did a coffee in his brother's honor. And we just cut a check for them to St. Jude's. So the sales from those coffees we did for St. Jude's. We had something that I'll point to up here that we did without saying any names because I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. But that would be one of our crew members that we lost last September. Hits home. This is one of our 4 horsemen, that up there. We did something for him that caused and ruffled some feathers, apparently. And I won't be apologetic for it. We were doing it for a good reason, not to hurt anybody's feelings. But we will continue to try and do stuff now, however we can do it. If we can get a portion of the proceeds, even if it's, every May we sit down and what did we do for the last 12 months? Can we take 1% of the sales, or can we take, 2% of the sales and pick 1 or 2? Can we pick an EMS? Can we pick a nursing student? Can we pick someone going off into the fire studies and try and apply it that way? We just need to sit down and come up, and we're coming into April. I need to sit down and come up with something to approach our local high school and say, how can we, how do we put this out to 5 or 10 students that are going these directions and have them write a simple essay and then pick somebody? Or do we just try and apply it to everybody if we can? And we're small. We are tiny. I self-fund this entire thing. If my wife ever truly looked at the books, she probably would murder me. I think we're on the cusp of going larger than we could ever want to be. I don't know how hard, but if I can use this as a vessel to help our youth go into this career field, but go into it with the eyes open, that there's a lot of stigmas that were there that that nobody warned us about or told us to be warned about and be proactive about, then let's use this as a vessel to do that. And long answer, I think that's kind of what I was trying to get to is
that's a great point. You get into these career fields, and I'd have to believe most people don't go into these career fields thinking, I'm not going to see any of that bad stuff. You're going to. So I don't even know if you can prepare yourself for some of the stuff you see. But like you said, the stuff they don't tell you is how do you process it afterwards? A lot of guys find negative ways to cope, and that's just part of the response because you don't know any different. The stigma is there. Suck it up. It's kind of, I get it, but you're not helping anybody by kind of rubbing their nose in it and just telling them, suck it up. Go drink a whiskey and you'll be fine. Until that becomes a habit and a problem, and your family suffers for it.
And then that
because
person
you chose those negative ways
to said do that, they're quick to do this when I don't want anything to do with that one.
Well, and they're also probably on their 3rd divorce. The kids don't talk to them. Not saying it. Everyone finds their own ways to cope for this stuff, and a lot of it is bad. And the stigma is changing. Thankfully, we're starting to recognize the signs and symptoms. You can walk into a room of your fellow firefighters or law enforcement officers and kind of, now that you're on the healing end of it, you can look at them like, that guy, he's carrying a burden.
You can almost see the path they're on.
Oh, 100%. And you kind of want to, sit down, spread. I think that's one thing about my story I had a couple people ask, and, when they find out, you went through some bad shit. Well, yeah, we all do. And yeah, I wasn't coping the way I should have. I took a lot of it out on my family and my kids, and it's to recognize that and try and right the course of the ship. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to sit down. I sat down with my wife and my 2 boys and said, look, I was an asshole. I get it. I can only apologize and try and be better. But in order to do that, it helps to, there's younger firemen that come up to me and say, oh, well, there's a program, I went through it. Hopefully we'll discuss it on a future episode called Save a Warrior. It's located here in Ohio, and their drive is to help veterans and first responders deal with complex post-traumatic stress and get to the real heart of the issues as to why we are the way we are. And that program opened my eyes, and I brought back a lot of lessons from that. And I try and share my story with other responders who are still kind of hesitant. They can kind of tell, I don't want to appear weak. That's a big thing with these lines of work, is you show weakness and people hold that against you, whatever. I think it takes a lot of strength to tell your story to others. And if you can help just one individual just by saying, look, I went through it, I was down in the depths and found a way out, and you can too, without self-destructing or ruining your marriage or your family.
When you're married and you have kids, you have too much to lose. It's the old airplane adage. You got to put I used to hate that because, I'm not going to be selfish and put the mask on myself. I'm not going to do anybody any good if I don't put the mask on and do myself the right thing and get my air going. Then I can help others. It's
Right.
that same adage. You have to get yourself right to be able to help others truly. You have to be willing to do that, and I'm still working on that every day, because I tell my kids and I've told my wife, you got to call me out at times because I'll forget. I forget all the time, and I don't even think I had it bad at all. And that's the worst part, is I don't think I had it bad at all. One of our guys said it and coined a phrase. I don't know if he coined it or if he heard it or what, but it's the first time I heard it was, it's okay to be not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Such a simple line. It's okay to not be okay. And there is nothing. When you go into these career lines at a young age, yeah, you might expect to see stuff, and you might have already seen some stuff, but you don't. There is no how do you process it method other than suck it up. That's an old way of doing things that never worked. It's not going to work in the future. And if they're going to truly, and this goes for the bigger, the government heads that run our towns and townships and everything else, if they're really truly going to maintain the health and well-being of their troops, they need to have that in their mind, and the stigma has to get broken. And to be fair, we have to break the stigma ourselves first.
Right.
As
a buddy of mine told me, the saying he likes to use is, no one's coming to help us but us. I'm sure. Yeah, there you go.
Expect the self-rescue. See if I got it right.
That's it.
Hope is not a good plan. No one is coming. It's up to us.
That's it.
I think it's at 30 seconds out. I think they're called.
Yep.
It's cliche, but there it is.
Yep. It's that shirt. Expect to self-rescue. If you even that the cliche of the putting on the mask, that's perfect, because guys like us that do the jobs we do, we're pretty much trained. That's what we do, is we help others. Mm-hmm. We put ourselves in harm's way, damn the torpedoes, whatever happens to us, if just to save a life.
It's not a cocky thing. It's not a macho thing. That's
the way we are. But you have to stop and say, I'm no good helping anyone else if I can't help myself. So it takes a lot to recognize that. It takes an even bigger person to do something about it. So
it takes a lot to keep reminding yourself that too. Like I forget.
Oh yeah, it's a never-ending process. I slip up every now and then, and you just kind of
all the time.
Catch the way they tell you at Save Warriors, you catch yourself catching yourself. Yeah. You lash out and say something, you're like, I shouldn't have done that. Let me apologize. I should be better and work on being better.
Yeah. Put your ego aside.
That's a hard thing for a lot of people in this line of work.
And there's a lot of, I know an awful lot of good people that do a lot of good things that still let ego run their daily activities, that if they got rid of it, they'd be 100 times better as a leader than they are now. They're good now. If they got rid of that ego, they'd be 100 times better.
That's amazing. Well, like your slogan says on your website, saving lives one cup at a time. That's coffee
I hate cliches, but it works. And if it's I jokingly say I want folks to slow down because we run a rat race every day. We run here from one thing to the next at Mach 1, and you know if you slow down and take the time to enjoy it over use coffee as a vessel with that reason to slow down with friends and family, life's only going to get better.
Yeah, slow down and be present. That's a big thing in life now is people aren't present in the moment.
I mean, do I miss the job at times? Absolutely. Do I miss the shift work? No. Do I miss the nastiness at times? And again, we didn't have it hard where I was. We had it. It was there, but you could patrol a phone booth, or you could work the worst city in the nation, and it can happen because of the nature of the job. But it's retiring for me was putting me in place with my family, and I was missing that time with them, and I didn't realize how bad I was missing that time.
Yeah.
And I mean, that to me is everything. Like tonight, we have our first softball game. I can't wait to see what happens. I mean, that's going to be cool.
Well, and that's a lot of guys in this line of work, police, fire, EMS. They invest so much of their lives into their careers. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
But when you put more effort into your career than you do your family, that's when you're on a very slippery slope. I'm not ashamed to say I did that for years.
Yeah.
I put my career on a pedestal. When I was a fireman and a medic, I wanted to become one of the better medics I could because I felt I owed the people I was running on that. But my family suffered. And that time, you just watch that time go through that hourglass. And, I started the job and I had 2 little kids, and now I've got one going to college and the other one's a freshman in high school. That time's gone. You never get it back.
You're not getting that back. That's it. I mean, I've been told more times than I can count on. Time goes so fast that you'll turn around in the blink of an eye. Your kids that are little, that can't even ride a bike, or can barely even ride a scooter, are going to be going off to college, and it'll be in a blink of an eye.
Well, and the funny thing is, like guys like us that have older kids, you run into a younger fireman who just had a baby, and you tell them, don't blink, and they just kind of, yeah, I know, I've heard that before.
I did. I said it.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever, old head.
Just look at me and listen to me. Don't blink. Enjoy every moment. Be present with your kids while they're little.
Soak every second up you
can.
I tell them all, soak up every second you can.
Well, on the subject of time, we're coming up on an hour already. You believe that? I'm just sitting here chatting.
That's the art of the Irish gab. I got it.
Yeah, that it is. So I guess in closing, just kind of want to plug your website. Nolansporhouse.com is where you can get some amazing coffee. I've got a couple blends myself. Absolutely love it. I'm going to be taking it to work to share with some coworkers. Definitely ordering some more. I appreciate your support of our podcast. I do agree. I think our visions are very similar as far as just sitting down with a cup of coffee and just talking. Putting the phones down for a minute. It's I see the irony in that because people are probably listening to this podcast on a phone, but
absolutely
just to be present. And your coffee is pretty darn good, if I can say so myself.
I'm biased, I think so, but I mean, it's again, I was at gymnastics last week with earbuds in, listening to your episode there with Skittles, and again, the phone was in place because I was using it, but I've used a lot of podcasts to help, not guide's the word I'm looking for, but help guide, for lack of better words, what to do and where to focus attention on. And that is, you almost want to say, I shouldn't have to be, told this, but family first, that kind of thing. And personal, health and well-being. I've got a lot of ground to make up. I did 30 some plus years of, piss poor personal attitude on everything that I'm now trying to correct and rewrite and make right. But podcasts are it. I agree. I think you guys, the concept of sitting at the table and getting through that after action review from a call, or just looking after one another, because like you said, when you go through, to use another coin phrase, when you go through the suck with somebody, you experience something that, and I don't mean to take it, and I'm not saying it in a bad way to the civilians that don't know what we're talking about. When you go through that suck with somebody, you can't explain it to anybody else that knows it went through it. And
I think that's another thing is you're not alone.
No.
You're never alone.
No.
No matter how bad things can be, there's always somebody there with you that's either been through it and can guide you or is going through it with you.
One of our guys, again, it might have been Ron, I forget who it was, the way they explained it is we've been in the hole, we know our way out.
Yep.
We've been there, and and I've always said it, and again, I've heard it somewhere, it's cyclical. Everything's cyclical. You have a great day, then you're going to have that bad day. And, well, guess what? That bad day is going to turn to a good day at some point. You just got to muscle through, but, use your resources. Use your people. Don't be afraid to, hey, I'm in a foul mood today. I need to shake something loose. Who wants coffee? Call somebody.
Yep. Don't let the bad days define you. That's
And you can't. I've tried to explain it to some of the professionals out there. It could be a bright sunny day and it's just a crappy day to you. It could be a rainy day and it's a great day to you. There's no rhyme or reason.
You don't see the sun if you don't look up.
Yeah. So I mean,
if you keep your head down and you just want to keep kicking the rocks down the road, then you got to look up, man. Try and find the good in the day.
And we're not going to be able to help everybody, but by God, it starts with yourself first. You got to be willing to listen, willing to help yourself, and then after that, man, the world's your oyster. Like Pinky and the Brain, it's time to take over the world.
There you go.
Again, I think you guys have it. I can't wait to see where you grow this thing.
Well, we'll see. That's kind of the, I listen to some podcasts and I'm like, man, that guy's got some good points. And you kind of want to put your own spin on it, and hopefully we have some good guests and people find it interesting to listen to, and we'll see where it goes. But there's people that'll listen. I'll keep talking.
There we go. I agree. I'll do it next time. I'll come out in person.
Well, yeah, maybe we can get together and do some turkey hunting or something.
I'm not going to argue that. You can't beat time in the woods. Best place to take a nap.
It's been a few years since I've gone hunting, and that was kind of my therapy time. There were days when I went, I just, God bless my wife. She would let me go. I'd go from sun up to sundown. I think there were days I didn't even take the bow up in the stand. I just sat up there and enjoyed the peace and quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And the best naps ever were in a tree stand.
I slept in a meadow in a duck boat and lean back, and you wake up and there's ducks in the decoys, and you just chuckle and laugh and go about your day. Or, my one buddy said he had a turkey walk right up on him, scared the living daylights out of him. I mean, it just because he was dead asleep, he had no idea.
Yep.
Another young kid, he says to me, I never sleep. I don't take naps. Well, I got photographic evidence of him sleeping.
Oh yeah, it's always the ones that, I don't take naps. I don't. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I won't fall asleep.
Yep.
Okay.
First hunting trip, I found him dead asleep in the woods next to me, out cold. So
that's awesome.
Keith, if you're watching this, Keith, I'm talking about you. You fell asleep out there. But
well, Craig, I appreciate your time, man. It's been great sitting down talking to you.
All right, be good. Take care of your boys and girls out there. All right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see where this partnership goes with the coffee company. And like I said,
you let me know.
We'll keep drinking the coffee.
You just let me know what you need, and we'll make sure there's coffee on the table for you guys and girls out there. And that's that's my goal. Is I want to keep seeing this idea grow, and there's good reason behind it.
Well, let's hope. We'll see what happens. Either way, we'll do it together. I appreciate it.
Sounds good.
Craig, thanks for your time.
Sláinte.